Compliance certification. 2 words nobody thinks about until everything stops working. I was the only person in the company who could sign off on our global product launch. The CEO removed me from the project on a live stream while investors watched and clapped. He called it decisive leadership. I called it to check one thing in the system before I walked out. 48 hours later, every dashboard turned red. The launch froze. Regulators called. Millions burned. And suddenly, the woman he humiliated on camera was the only person who could save him. Except I wasn't interested in saving anyone anymore. Welcome to Revenge with Precious, where we share real stories of betrayal, resilience, and the courage to stand up for yourself. These are tales of people who refused to stay silent, who drew boundaries when love turned toxic, and who chose their peace over family obligation. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, these stories are for you. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story that might change how you see your own life. Please, watch till the end. Let's get start. The glass conference room amplified every sound. 200 employees watched through the live stream as the CEO's voice cut through the silence like a blade through paper. My name vanished from the project dashboard on the 70-inch screen behind him. 1 second it was there, listed as Compliance Program Manager, and the next it dissolved into nothing. The chat window beside the video feed exploded with clapping emojis and fire icons. Performative enthusiasm from people who were terrified of being next. We're streamlining leadership, the CEO announced, his smile perfectly calibrated for the camera. We need energy, not paperwork. I sat 3 rows back, hands folded in my lap. I didn't stand. I didn't object. I just looked at the screen, then at my phone, and quietly opened the compliance portal. My access was still active. My certifications were still listed. The final approval authority still had my name attached, locked into the system by regulatory requirements nobody else had bothered to read. I whispered to myself, barely audible over the applause. I just checked one thing. My name is June. I've worked in compliance for 12 years, 8 of them at this company. I don't build products. I don't pitch investors. I don't generate buzz on social media. What I do is make sure things can exist legally. I'm the person who reads the 70-page data protection regulations, the cross-border transfer agreements, the certification requirements that everyone else skips because they're boring. I'm the invisible scaffolding that holds up the entire structure. The CEO used to praise my precision. 3 years ago, he called me a company hero after I caught a regulatory gap that would have cost us $14 million in fines. Back then, I was the person who saved launches. Now, according to the new org chart, I was redundant. A relic of an older, slower way of doing business. Someone who slowed down momentum with questions and checklists. But momentum without compliance isn't innovation. It's just expensive chaos waiting to implode. Alignment week started on a Monday. The entire executive team gathered in the atrium for a presentation titled Lean Transformation. Buzzwords filled the air like smoke. Streamline. Redundant roles. Operational efficiency. The slides were designed by someone who thought gradients and sans serif fonts made ideas bulletproof. I watched the reorg charts shift in real time, departments dissolving and reforming under new names that meant nothing. My team got folded into operations, which meant we'd report to someone who didn't understand the difference between internal audits and regulatory certifications. The CEO smiled for the press photographers stationed outside. Inside, he was quietly erasing the people who understood how the machine actually worked. I took notes. Not because I trusted the process, but because I wanted a record. Dates, statements, decisions. I'd learned long ago that in corporate environments, memory is unreliable but documentation is forever. My project access disappeared overnight. No warning, no meeting. Just an automated email from IT at 6:30 in the morning. Your permissions have been updated as part of the organizational transition. For access questions, contact your manager. I tried logging into the compliance portal. Access denied. I tried the product development dashboard. Access denied. Even my shared drive folders were grayed out, inaccessible. It was surgical, efficient, and completely silent. I wasn't fired yet, but I was functionally erased. I didn't panic. Panic is what they expect from people they're pushing out. Instead, I opened my personal laptop, the one the company didn't control, and downloaded the one document that mattered most, the Certification Delegation Clause. Section 9, Subsection 3. The part that explained who had final approval authority for data compliance across all global markets. The clause was clear. The certifying officer of record retained approval authority unless formally replaced through regulatory notification. My name was on file with 3 different government agencies. Removing me required paperwork, formal filings, weeks of processing. They hadn't done any of it. I reread the clause 3 times that night, sitting at my kitchen table with a mug of tea going cold beside me. The language was dense, built for lawyers and regulators, not for executives in a hurry. But the meaning was simple: I was still the authority. My signature was still required. The company couldn't launch in the EU, couldn't process customer data legally, couldn't claim compliance without my approval. And no one else knew. The CEO hadn't read the documentation. The legal team had been downsized 2 months earlier. Operations thought compliance was just a checklist you ticked before shipping. They'd removed me from the project, but they hadn't removed me from the system. The scaffolding was still standing. They just couldn't see it anymore. I saved a copy of the clause to 3 separate drives, encrypted and timestamped. Then I closed my laptop and allowed myself one quiet smile. The announcement came on Thursday. The CEO went live on the company's investor channel, standing in front of a backdrop that read "Innovation Without Limits." He wore the kind of expensive casual outfit that rich people think makes them relatable. His voice carried that rehearsed enthusiasm tech executives use when they're trying to sound visionary. "We're launching globally in 72 hours, he declared. "This is the biggest moment in company history." The chat exploded. Investors posted rocket emojis. Employees commented with congratulations. I watched from my phone, sitting in a coffee shop 3 blocks from the office. The launch date he announced was impossible. I knew the compliance checks hadn't been completed. I knew the certifications weren't signed. I knew the system would trigger an automatic block the moment they tried to go live. I took a sip of my coffee and felt something quiet settle inside me. Not anger. Not satisfaction. Just the calm certainty of knowing exactly what was about to happen. HR called me in for a transition interview on Friday morning. The room was small, windowless, designed to make people feel trapped. Across from me sat a woman I'd never met before, holding a tablet and wearing the kind of forced smile that HR professionals practice in front of mirrors. "We're clarifying roles," she explained, scrolling through a script on her screen. "New direction. Cultural fit. You understand." I answered every question politely. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just responded with the kind of neutral professionalism that makes people uncomfortable because it gives them nothing to push against. When she asked if I felt bitter about the changes, I paused. "You'll see why this conversation mattered in about 48 hours, I said calmly. She blinked. "I don't understand." "You will." I stood up, thanked her for her time, and left the room before she could respond. Evan found me packing my desk that afternoon. He was one of the junior compliance analysts, someone I'd trained 2 years earlier when he didn't know the difference between GDPR and CCPA. Now he looked nervous, glancing over his shoulder like someone might be watching. "They're rushing the launch," he whispered. "Legal didn't even see your checklist." I nodded, carefully placing my desk plant into a cardboard box. "That's fine." "Fine." He stared at me. "June, this is going to be a disaster." "It's not about revenge, Evan." I looked up at him. "It's about procedure. Systems work when people follow the rules. When they don't, the system corrects itself." He didn't understand. Not yet. But he would in 2 days when every screen in the building turned red. 72 hours until launch. Marketing sent global press releases to every major outlet. Tech blogs wrote preview articles. The company's social media accounts posted countdown graphics. Inside the building, excitement hummed like electricity. Everyone believed they were part of something historic. I watched the internal dashboard from home. There was a small status indicator in the corner, barely noticeable unless you knew what to look for. Pending compliance validation. The text was gray, not green. It meant the system was waiting for final approval before it would allow the launch to proceed. I took a screenshot. Then another. Then I opened my archive folder and added them to the collection. Timestamps, emails, system logs, everything documented and saved. Not because I planned to use them, but because I'd learned that in corporate warfare, evidence is the only ammunition that matters. Inside the legal department's shared inbox, a flagged email sat unread. The subject line was technical, easy to ignore if you didn't understand compliance protocols, action required, certification authority renewal pending. The message was automatically generated by the regulatory system. It listed my name as the certifying officer of record and requested confirmation that I was still authorized to approve data processing across all global markets. The email had been sent to my company account 3 days earlier. But my account had been deactivated. The message sat there, unread and unacknowledged, while the countdown to launch continued. The system was designed to be foolproof. It required human confirmation before it would allow operations to proceed. Without my approval, the launch would trigger an automatic compliance block. The CEO had removed my access before I could click the approval button. He'd locked me out of the one thing he needed me to do. And now the clock was ticking. My last morning in the building was quiet. I walked through the hallways slowly, carrying my box of personal items. People avoided eye contact. Some pretended to be on phone calls. Others suddenly became very interested in their computer screens. No one said goodbye. Corporate fear is contagious, and I was the warning sign they all wanted to ignore. I left my access badge on the reception desk. The security guard, someone I'd smiled at every morning for 8 years, took it without looking at me. I walked out through the glass doors and into the bright morning sun. Before I left, I'd forwarded one final document to my personal email. It was the complete audit trail of every compliance certification tied to the product launch. Every signature requirement, every approval checkpoint, every regulatory filing. All of it time-stamped, encrypted, and archived beyond the company's reach. I wasn't planning revenge. I was just keeping records. Launch day arrived like a holiday. The boardroom glowed blue from dashboard screens. Executives gathered around the table, their faces lit by monitors displaying real-time analytics. The countdown timer on the main screen ticked down, 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 3. The CEO stood at the head of the table, arms crossed, watching with the kind of confidence that comes from never having been wrong before. Marketing had champagne ready. Communications had press statements queued. Operations had regional teams standing by across 12 time zones. The timer hit 0. The screen flashed. Then it turned red. Error, missing data compliance approval. Launch blocked. The room went silent. The CEO laughed nervously. Run it again. They ran it again. The same error. Again. Same error. Again. Same error. The champagne stayed unopened. The first call came from Berlin. A partner at the European distribution office, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. Your compliance certification expired. Our legal team is flagging the product as unauthorized for EU markets. Then Tokyo called. Then Singapore. Then London. Every regional office reported the same problem. The system had automatically blocked the launch pending compliance approval. Without valid certification, they couldn't process customer data. Without data processing, the product couldn't function. The CEO's confident tone cracked. This is a technical glitch. IT can fix it. IT couldn't fix it. Because it wasn't a glitch. It was the system working exactly as designed. Someone in operations pulled up the compliance dashboard. Every regional market showed the same status, red. Every certification showed the same notation, pending approval from certifying officer of record. Then someone asked the question that changed everything. Who's the named certifier? Silence. Then a junior analyst whispered, June. The emergency meeting lasted 4 hours. The CEO ordered IT to override the compliance block. The head of IT, a man who'd worked there longer than anyone else, shook his head slowly. We can't override regulatory controls. That's a criminal violation under GDPR. We'd face fines, potential prosecution, and immediate market suspension. The CEO slammed his hand on the table. Then what do we do? Legal pulled up the documentation. They read the clause I'd saved weeks earlier. The certifying officer of record retained approval authority unless formally replaced through regulatory notification. June's name was on file with the European Data Protection Board, the UK Information Commissioner's Office, and the Federal Trade Commission. Removing her required paperwork. Lots of it. Paperwork no one had filed. HR quietly started deleting old Slack messages. Too late. The paper trail was already archived. By evening, the damage was spreading. Investors sent urgent emails demanding explanations. Press outlets started asking questions about the delayed launch. Competitors smelled blood and began circling. The CFO called a private meeting with the CEO. Their voices carried through the glass walls. You removed the compliance officer without checking if we could function without her? She was redundant, the CEO shot back. We don't need someone who just says no to everything. We needed someone who could say yes when it mattered. And now she's gone. The CFO resigned the next morning. The resignation letter was brief, professional, and devastating. It blamed fundamental disagreements about operational risk management. Wall Street translated that correctly: the leadership had screwed up. The email arrived Tuesday morning, sent from a government domain with an official seal in the header. Notice of investigation, non-compliance inquiry, regulatory authority request. The compliance authority wanted a formal statement from the certifying officer of record regarding the company's data processing practices. They wanted documentation. They wanted assurances. They wanted answers. And only I could provide them. My old company email inbox, the one I could still access from my personal devices, flooded with messages. Panicked requests from operations. Desperate pleas from department heads. Formal inquiries from legal. Everyone suddenly remembered that compliance wasn't just paperwork. It was the foundation everything else was built on. I read each message carefully. Then I archived them without responding. The CEO called me directly on Wednesday afternoon. My phone showed his personal number, the one he gave to executives and investors. I let it ring twice before answering. June. His voice was polite, controlled. We need to talk. About what? About fixing this situation. Can you just log in once? Just approve the certification so we can move forward. I stood at my apartment window, watching traffic move below. I can't. What do you mean you can't? I no longer represent your organization. I'm not authorized to act on your behalf. You removed me from the project, remember? You made that very clear. Silence on the other end. The live stream was watched by 200 people, I continued calmly. You said you needed energy, not paperwork. You got exactly what you wanted. I hung up before he could respond. The leaked meeting notes appeared on an anonymous industry blog Thursday morning. Someone inside the company, probably someone who'd been quietly documenting everything, had shared the internal chaos. The notes detailed the emergency meetings, the failed override attempts, the regulatory investigation. Investors demanded accountability. A board member, someone with decades of experience who'd warned against the restructuring, asked the question that ended careers: who approved removing the compliance officer? The CEO blamed operations. Operations blamed HR. HR blamed the CEO. Everyone pointed fingers while the company burned. The stock price dropped 18% in 2 days. The call came from a number I didn't recognize. The voice on the other end was professional, warm, and refreshingly direct. My name is Vincent. I'm the COO of Helix Systems. We've been following your work for years. We'd like to discuss an opportunity. Helix was our biggest competitor. They'd been trying to break into the European market for 18 months without success. Now they wanted to build a compliance infrastructure from scratch, and they wanted me to design it. What's the role? I asked. Director of Global Compliance. Full authority over all regulatory decisions. Double your previous salary, equity options, and a team you build yourself. I didn't say yes immediately. I let the silence stretch, let them understand that I wasn't desperate. I'll consider it, I said finally. Send me the details. They sent them within an hour. The regulators arrived Friday morning, unannounced. 3 officials from the Data Protection Authority, carrying tablets and briefcases, asking to speak with the certifying officer of record. The CEO's innovation-first speech evaporated. His carefully rehearsed talking points about disruption and moving fast meant nothing to people who enforced laws for a living. They requested documentation. They found gaps everywhere. Every certification showed the same problem, missing final approval signature. My signature. The product was legally frozen. No data processing. No customer onboarding. No revenue generation. The launch that was supposed to be the biggest moment in company history had become the biggest failure. The regulators left with promises of follow-up audits and potential enforcement actions. The all-staff email went out Monday morning. The subject line was deliberately vague, product launch update. Due to unforeseen regulatory delays, the global launch has been postponed indefinitely. We are working diligently to resolve compliance requirements and will provide updates as they become available. The tone was corporate, sanitized, designed to minimize panic. But everyone knew the truth. The company had imploded because someone decided paperwork wasn't important. The invisible scaffolding had collapsed, and now everyone could see the wreckage. My former team members started reaching out privately. Quiet messages expressing frustration, anger, and regret. They'd watched me get removed and said nothing. Now they understood what they'd lost. The CEO appeared at my new office without an appointment. Security called to ask if I'd see him. I almost said no, but curiosity won. He looked tired. The polish was gone, replaced by something that looked almost human. He sat across from my desk and tried to apologize. We didn't understand the value of your role. We moved too fast. We made mistakes. I listened without interrupting. When he finished, I slid a printed document across the desk. It was the removal notice, the one that had erased my name from the project dashboard during the live stream. You signed this yourself, I said quietly. You removed me. You deactivated my access. You blocked me from doing the one thing you now desperately need. He stared at the paper. This isn't about revenge, I continued. It's about consequences. You built a system that required expertise, then removed the expert. The system corrected itself. The news broke Tuesday afternoon. The headline appeared on every major business outlet: CEO steps down amid compliance crisis. The official statement used phrases like pursuing personal interests and strategic transition. The truth was simpler. The board had forced him out after investors threatened to pull funding. The company's reputation was damaged. The stock price continued falling. My new company, Helix Systems, quietly announced successful compliance certifications across all European markets. The press release was subtle, professional, and devastating to my former employer. Their clients started calling us. My inbox overflowed with congratulations and job offers. I responded to the important ones and archived the rest. The email came from Evan, my former junior analyst. The subject line read, "We miss your calm." He described the chaos still consuming the company. New leadership trying to rebuild. Consultants brought in at massive expense. Systems that still didn't work because no one understood the foundation. I replied simply, systems run best when people respect the rules. Tell them I said that. Then I closed my laptop and looked at my new compliance dashboard. Every regional market showed green. Every certification was current. Every approval was properly documented. This was what competence looked like. Not flashy. Not exciting. Just functional. 6 months later, I stood in my new corner office watching Helix Systems launch their global product. The rollout was perfect. Every regulatory requirement met. Every certification is current. Every approval is properly documented and filed. My phone buzzed. A message from a number I'd deleted but still recognized. Would you consider a consulting engagement? We're willing to discuss terms. It was the CEO. Or rather, the former CEO, now desperate enough to reach out to the person he'd humiliated on camera. I typed my response carefully. My terms haven't changed. I only approve of integrity now. I hit send and set my phone down. Outside my window, the city glowed with afternoon light. Somewhere across town, my former company was still trying to fix the damage caused by removing the person who held everything together. But I wasn't interested in saving them anymore. I'd built something better. Systems run best when people respect the rules. And some lessons, no matter how expensive, have to be learned the hard way. Thank you for watching this story. If moments like these resonate with you, if you've ever had to choose yourself over people who couldn't see you, then you're not alone. We share stories like this every single day, real accounts of people who found their voice, set their boundaries, and walked into the life they deserved. Subscribe so you never miss the next upload, and share your own story in the comments below. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. I love you all.